Karen Holt's SUV door slammed hard enough to rattle my windows. By the time I stepped outside, she was already crouched by my mom's car pressing a yellow Notice of Violation, Farshar 12-07. Received, 03-17 under the wiper like a trophy. Community symmetry, she said, chin high, clipboard shaking. My mom hadn't even left the driveway. That's when I saw it, the so-called HOA Enforcement Division logo she'd printed herself. Fake department. Real arrogance. Neighbors peeked through curtains. The camera above the gate clicked once, recording everything. That's when I decided to show up at the meeting. The morning started too quiet for a Saturday. I was tightening a hinge inside my garage when a sharp beep click echoed from across the street. The HOA camera on the lamppost blinked twice, red light pulsing through the mist. Mom's SUV was parked halfway down the drive, still glistening with dew. I stepped out wrench in hand, and that's when I saw it, a yellow paper folded under the wiper. Notice of Violation, PR 12-07. Received, 03-17, 3:17 a.m. I frowned. Nobody writes tickets at 3 in the morning. The paper smelled of toner and arrogance. Across the top, HOA Enforcement Division. There was no such thing in our bylaws, I knew that much. The HOA had a board, not a division. I turned toward the cul-de-sac and saw her Karen Holt, the HOA president, clipboard in one hand, coffee in the other, standing like she owned the asphalt. "Morning," I called. She smiled the way a referee smiles before calling a foul. "We've had complaints, Jack. Your mother's vehicle blocks the visual symmetry of the street." Symmetry. I held up the paper. "You mean her car?" "It's in violation," she said, tapping the clipboard. "Our new subsection clarifies driveways must remain unobstructed by overnight vehicles. Funny," I said, "since the car hasn't moved since Tuesday." She shrugged. "Then it's been in violation all week." The camera on the pole pivoted slightly, whir, click, as if listening. Mom came out with her robe pulled tight. "Karen, it's my driveway." Karen didn't blink. Community property begins at the curb. The HOA maintains curb visibility. Tom Bradley. My neighbor strolled over from his mailbox, coffee thermos in hand. He muttered, "Don't bother arguing, Jack. She finds first talks later." I folded the paper. "So, this came at 3:17 in the morning. Who does inspections in the dark?" Karen's smile stiffened. "Our enforcement team is authorized for overnight monitoring." "By whom?" "The board," she said. "Unanimous vote," Tom whispered. "She wrote the rule herself." I looked up at the camera, its red light blinking like a metronome for paranoia. "You running surveillance on residents now?" Karen ignored me, marking something on her clipboard. "You have 72 hours to comply." She placed another slip on the mailbox, duplicate copy. "That's not a ticket," Tom murmured. "It's a warning from her." I took a slow breath, feeling the heat crawl up my neck. "Karen, this is my mom's property. You don't get to sneak around at night and—" She cut me off. "I suggest you attend the next meeting, Mr. Morris. The new symmetry standards are public record." "Public?" I asked. "Then maybe you won't mind when I make this public too." I raised my phone and took a photo of her, the clipboard, the camera overhead. Another beep click. The lens captured us both. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint hum of the suburban air, the lawn sprinklers, a bird somewhere behind the garages, the slow tick of the cooling engine. Mom stepped closer. "You've gone too far, Karen." Karen exhaled through her nose, folded her papers, and turned toward her golf cart. "Rules keep a neighborhood civilized." Tom leaned toward me as she left. "Save that notice, Jack. Don't throw it away. You'll need proof." I stared at the printed time 03:17 a.m. and the words HOA Enforcement Division, a department that didn't exist. The red light above flicked once more, and for half a heartbeat I thought I heard another camera somewhere answer back. I slipped the notice into a plastic sleeve and slid it into my work folder, the one labeled Receipts and Permits. The paper rustled, stiff and official, like a promise waiting to turn into a threat. Inside the garage, the smell of motor oil mixed with the faint, damp air. I turned off the light, but the LED from outside still blinked through the small window. Rhythmic, patient watching. Mom stood in the doorway. "They can't really fine us for parking at home, can they?" "They can try," I said. "And if they do, we'll be ready." She nodded, her eyes on the camera. "Feels like being trespassed on." "That's the point," I said. "They want us to feel small before we even start." The wind shifted, flipping the corner of the notice still taped to the mailbox. The word "violation" fluttered like a warning flag. I watched it for a long moment before pulling it free. Behind me, the garage door creaked closed. One last click echoed from the pole, soft, precise, final. The diner on Maple Road smelled like bacon and burnt coffee. Saturday regulars' boots dusted with lawn clippings, the TV muted above the pie case. Tom waved me over to a booth with patched vinyl and a view of the post office across the lot. "Got something," he said, sliding his phone across the Formica. Subject line: Compliance Warning Vehicle, Symmetry Violation. The CC field ran 3 lines long. Neighbors, board members, even the realtor who sold us the house. She copied the entire neighborhood, I said. Public shaming in high gear. Tom unscrewed his thermos lid, the metal scraping softly. "Read the second paragraph." I scrolled. "If unpaid within 10 days, a lien may be filed." Attached a PDF with the same yellow notice of violation, 412-07, now dressed in a logo that said HOA Enforcement Division with an eagle, clip art. "There is no enforcement division," I said. "It's a board." "Not to her," Tom said. "To her, it's a kingdom." The waitress set down 2 coffees. "Refills on me, boys." She glanced at the phone the way people do when a quiet thing suddenly looks important. "Everything okay?" "House stuff," I answered. "We'll be fine." She nodded like people who know that might not be true and left us to the smell of scorched grounds. I pinched to zoom. At the bottom of the email, a signature block with Karen's name and a line that read, "Director Community Safety. New title." I asked. "New crown," Tom said. My phone buzzed on cue. Mom. "Hey, you at the garage diner. Tom's here." "You see the email I did?" she said. Her voice was steady, little ice underneath. "There's also a certified letter slip in our mailbox. I'm headed to the post office to sign for it." I looked out the window at the brick building across the lot. A blue flag snapped in wind that smelled like fryer oil. "I'll meet you at the counter." "Don't rush," she said. "Take pictures of everything." Tom raised an eyebrow at that last bit like he'd been replaced as the resident mentor. "Your mom's got instincts," he said. "She taught me receipts are just the long way to the truth." We crossed the lot. The post office door chimed with tired cheer. A clerk in a polo brought out a stiff envelope with green and white stickers and slid it across to Mom. "Signature here." He pointed at the line. Mom signed, flipped the envelope over. No return address, just a P.O. box and the same HOA Enforcement Division logo stamped in black. Tom murmured, "That's not standard. Most boards use their own address." We stepped aside, peeled the seal. Inside a letter on glossy paper, assessment $150 for visual obstruction of community symmetry due within 10 days. At the bottom, a watermark that looked like the county seal if the county seal had been drawn from memory. "That's fraud," I said quietly. "Or weirder, bad theater." Mom photographed each page against the postal counter letter envelope, the certified sticker. The camera shutter made clean little clicks that sounded like a metronome for standing up straight. We returned to the diner booth and spread the papers like a crime scene on laminate. I created folders on my phone, HOA, Notice, HOA, Email, HOA, Certified. Each file got a timestamp. I took shots of Tom's phone with the CC field visible, then forwarded the email to myself so headers would be preserved. "Still, think you can talk her down?" Tom asked. "No," I said. "I think I can document her down." He looked relieved, like he'd wanted to say that for months. The door chimed again. 2 older men stomped mud from their boots and took stools at the counter talking tractors and weather patterns. It grounded the room. It made the email feel even more ridiculous, like someone had slipped a prop into a documentary. Tom leaned in. "You want precedent." 2 streets over the Hendersons argued a holiday decor fine last year. She printed late-night notices under their wreath, CC'd the block, and claimed they were lowering property values. They sold for 10% under asking just to stop the bleeding. I stirred my coffee until the swirl erased itself. So, this is a playbook. It's her playbook. Write, rule, invent, title, threaten, lean. A kid at a corner table let his straw wrapper fly. The waitress scolded him gently. The place settled back to its regular heartbeat. I opened the email's view original and saved the raw headers. Tom watched impressed despite himself. Not your first time keeping receipts. Garage work, I said. If the state ever audits, bolts and numbers look a lot alike. My phone buzzed again, an incoming email. Re-compliance warning. The sender, Karen Holt. I'd replied earlier with a short message. Please provide the bylaw and public filing that authorize 8/12/07. Her answer loaded in a small, tight paragraph. All rules are internal. No external review permitted. Tom whistled low. She actually wrote that. She did, I said, and now it lives forever. Minnie Cliff cleared the room for a second. The TV muted above us reflected everything. The booth light, the steam from our cups, the word internal hanging off the glass like a smudge that wouldn't wash. Mom texted a photo from home, the yellow notice in a plastic sleeve clipped to a folder labeled HOA in her blocky handwriting. Keep receipts, the caption read. I saved the certified letter as PDF scan right there at the booth, the diner's hum pushing me forward. I forwarded both Karen's email and the PDF to a new account I'd created last night, one with a name only I'd recognize, then copied them to cloud and an old thumb drive I keep in my wallet. Tom nodded at my hands. There it is, that's the turn. What turn? From outrage, he said to building a case. We paid, tucked the papers back into the stiff envelope, and stepped outside. The flag over the post office cracked once in a clean gust. Across the street, the HOA camera sat on its pole still and blind in daytime, pretending not to watch. Back at the booth, I typed a final reply to Karen. Please cite the recorded covenant language and the county record of adoption. Also, provide the board vote and date. I will comply with any lawful rule. I hit send, then saved a screenshot of my own words with the timestamp in the corner like a tiny anchor. Tom capped his thermos. You know she'll come harder now. I'm counting on it, I said. Harder means clearer. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was true. I slid the certified envelope into my backpack and stood. The booth creaked back into place. The smell of bacon and burnt coffee folded around us again like a curtain resetting between acts. At the door, I paused. Internal law, I said almost to myself. That's not law, that's control. The community hall buzzed like a tired beehive. Fluorescent tubes flickered humming above rows of folding chairs and a long table draped in beige cloth. At the center, a gooseneck microphone waited like a little black scepter. Karen Holt took it in one hand and smiled as if lights rose on her stage. We'll begin, she said, and her voice filled the room with the steady authority of someone who never doubts her own script. Tonight's agenda: driveway encroachment community, symmetry, and safety. Phones lifted with a soft wave of clicks. Tom sat beside me, elbows on his knees. Mom, Ellen, crossed her ankles, expression polite enough to cut glass. Sarah Mitchell folded a tissue in her lap until it looked like a white rope. Karen tapped a stack of stapled papers. The board has adopted an addendum to our covenants. It clarifies vehicle placement and visual harmony standards. You'll find a copy on the side table. I took one. The header read Addendum 14B in a font that tried too hard. No county stamp, no recording number, just the HOA logo and a paragraph that sounded like it had been written with a ruler. Karen raised a laminated photo, a driveway with bright cones, a portable sign, temporary safety zone. The picture was angled dramatic, almost cinematic. As you can see, she said, blocked approaches compromise safety and curb appeal. This is unacceptable. A murmur ran the back row. I leaned forward. Where was that taken? Karen's smile widened. A comparable property, meaning ours. Tom nudged my boot steady. Mom lifted a hand, waited for the nod she knew wouldn't come. Has this addendum been recorded with the county clerk? She asked. Is there a document number we can reference? Karen glanced at her papers. Internal board policy doesn't require county participation. Policy isn't law. Mom said, voice even. If you want to bind property rights, you record it. A few heads turned. Someone whispered, Is she a lawyer? And phones zoomed in. Karen clasped the mic like a baton. We're empowered by the Declaration to maintain standards. Symmetry is a standard. Safety is a standard. Where is the authority for overnight surveillance? I asked. Our notice shows received 0317. A ripple of attention. Karen tilted her head. Community vigilance isn't surveillance, Mr. Morris. It's care. She lifted another laminated photo, a cone set at the corner of a driveway, a reflective strip catching light like a badge. Our volunteers ensure harmony. Volunteers with cameras at 3 a.m, I said. She ignored me. We'll now review fines. The schedule is modest. She read a list that sounded like a menu. Initial warning, $150. Continued obstruction, $250. Tow fee, variable. Sarah's tissue rope snapped in half. Tom cleared his throat. Would the board read the vote into the record names and dates? Karen looked past him. The board supports community safety. That's not a vote, Tom said. Phones leaned in like plants chasing sun. Karen turned to the audience. I will not allow this to become a free-for-all. We protect property values here. We are not a... She paused, searching for the right insult. A back lot. The room bristled. Our street wasn't fancy, just decent. People changed their own oil in driveways. Flags came out on holidays. A bulletin board by the mailboxes had more bake sales than politics. She talked like we were a mess she had to mop. Mom kept her tone dry. Again, recording number, or is this addendum only printed on your printer? A couple of chuckles escaped, nervous and grateful. Karen pressed the mic button with her thumb. The little red ring lit up like a warning. I am speaking. Silence landed. The fluorescent lights hummed louder like the room had leaned toward electricity. I flipped to page 2. Tucked between paragraphs was a grainy photo of a concrete barrier, a low block with 2 bolt holes captioned, Approved Safety Device. Prop num 2 right there in grayscale. I held the handout up. Where'd you get this order link, vendor? Or did you pose it for the photo? She ignored my question again. Addendum 14B clarifies towing authority. Towing from private drive, I asked. With what due process? She breathed through her nose. Next question. Mom raised her hand. This isn't a question. It's a request. Please read the authority with citation declaration article and amendment so residents can verify. Karen lifted her chin. The board is the authority. Soft outrage murmured under the chairs. Tom leaned to me without looking away. Document, not debate, he whispered. Keep receipts. I slid my phone into record and narrated softly near the mic. Addendum 14B presented no county recording photographs used as illustration towing indicated without due process. Karen spotted the phone. Her smile thinned. Mr. Morris meeting decorum. It's a public meeting, I said. Recordings protect everyone. She adjusted her papers as if rearranging a storm. Let me be clear. Next time I'll have your car towed. The sentence snapped through the hall like a thrown ruler. Even the fluorescents seemed to pause. Sarah inhaled sharply. Tom's jaw set. Mom didn't flinch. I said, On what authority gently like you talk to an unstable ladder? Karen let out a small, satisfied breath. Community safety. Minnie Cliff. The room waited for the floor to tilt. Mom's voice cut cleanly. You haven't answered the recording question. If you want to bind land, you record with the county. Without that, it's theater. Karen lifted her laminated photo again like a shield. Theater raises property values when the audience behaves. Phones collectively gasped a cheap digital intake. The board members at her flanks looked at their hands like the answer might be written there. I scanned the back page for a footer, a trace of legitimacy. Filed nothing. Recorded nothing. Just a thin line of text. Draft V1.2. I stood. One last thing I said evenly. If you tow my mother's car from our driveway without lawful authority, I'll be addressing it in the proper forum. Karen's smile returned brittle and proud. She leaned toward the mic so the whole room could catch the words. Community rules aren't a debate. Every phone rose at once, lenses blooming like new flowers. The room exhaled, and the hum of the lights felt suddenly colder. The sound came first. A drill cutting into concrete echoing through the quiet cul-de-sac. I stepped out from the garage sunlight sharp enough to sting my eyes. Two men in orange vests were lowering a rectangular block into the center of our driveway. Concrete dust rose in a white haze drifting across the hood of Mom's SUV. Karen Holt stood beside them with a clipboard, her sunglasses flashing like shields. "Morning, Mr. Morris," she said. "We're installing temporary safety barriers per HOA protocol." "Protocol?" I asked, raising my voice over the drill. "You mean trespassing?" Karen smiled as if that were a compliment. "Community safety allows reasonable access. This is preventative." Mom, Ellen, stood a few feet back on the porch, calm in a way that felt practiced. The sun hit the folder in her hands, and for a second I saw the faint gold of an embossed seal. She didn't move closer. She didn't need to. Tom appeared at the curb, hands in his jacket pockets. "You call for a permit, Karen?" She turned without answering. "Guys, make sure the bolts are secure. Liability is serious these days." The drill screamed again, a long metallic note that made the neighborhood flinch. Phones rose, 3 neighbors across the street recording from behind mailboxes. I shouted, "This isn't HOA property." "Karen," she gestured toward the curb. "Safety zone extends 5 feet beyond community boundary." Section 14B. "That addendum wasn't filed," I said. "You can't enforce a draft." She tapped the clipboard, never looking at me. The board voted unanimously. Ellen's voice was soft but carried. "You still haven't filed it with the county." Karen hesitated, then turned the other way. "Ma'am, please stay back while we work." Ellen's tone didn't change. "You're working on private land." The men paused. One looked at her, then at the camera on the streetlight still recording with its red LED blinking like an accusation. Karen clapped her hands once. "Gentlemen, continue. We're nearly done." The block landed with a heavy thud, cracking a small line through the fresh dust. Silence followed, thick, disbelieving. The kind of silence that tastes like the moment before thunder. Mom took a slow step forward. "Let her finish," she whispered, not to Karen, but to me. I wanted to move to stop them, to drag that block off the concrete, but she gave me one look, the same one she used when I was a kid about to make a mess bigger than I could clean up. So I stayed. Tom muttered, "She's crossing every line there is." Ellen's fingers tightened on the folder. The edge of the gold seal caught the sun again, a flash that cameras picked up instantly. Someone whispered, "Is that Karen noticed the movement?" "What's that, Mrs. Morris planning to file a complaint?" Ellen met her gaze. "Eventually." Karen smirked. "Well, I hope you'll include photos. The governor loves good infrastructure." That line hung for half a second too long. The men finished tightening the bolts. One stepped back, uncertain. We done." Karen waved them off. "Looks perfect." It didn't. The barrier cut our driveway in half, a small monument to arrogance. I crouched near the bolts, the dust sticking to my palms. "You're aware you've just modified private property without consent." Karen turned her head slightly. "Document your concerns through proper channels." "Which channels?" I asked. "You've replaced law with email." She smiled again, but it looked tired this time. "Order keeps order." Ellen stepped closer, stopping just shy of the barrier. Her shoes left prints in the dust. "Order built on fiction collapses fast," she said quietly. The folder in her hand tilted open by a fraction, enough for the gold state seal to glint unmistakable. The reflection hit one of the phone lenses across the street. The whisper spread fast. "That's a state emblem." Karen squinted. "What is that?" Ellen closed the folder. "Documentation." Karen folded her arms. "You'll find the HOA's attorney very responsive." Mom's voice didn't waver. "So will the governor's office." Karen blinked. "Excuse me." I stood brushing concrete dust off my hands. "You heard her." The phones zoomed in. Karen turned to the camera mounted on the pole, maybe hoping it would back her up. It didn't. The red light blinked once like punctuation. Ellen looked around at the neighbors. "Take your videos, please. It's evidence now." Someone muttered, "Finally." Karen's clipboard lowered by an inch. She regained her smile too quickly. "We're done here," she said to the workers. "Remove the equipment." But the men didn't move right away. They looked at the barrier, then at us, unsure which side of the line they were standing on. Mom took one last step forward, dust swirling around her shoes. "Then I suppose," she said, calm as glass, "the governor's office will need a statement." No one spoke. Even the drill stayed silent, a faint wisp of smoke curling from its motor. The quiet was heavier than the block itself. Noon cut hard across the street, bright enough to make the dust look like glitter. The tow truck rolled up with a hiss of air brakes and a soft ding from the cab door chime. Phones rose all along the sidewalk. The HOA camera's red LED blinked as if it had been waiting for noon all morning. Ellen stepped out beside the barrier with the folder in her hands. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the seal. Gold caught the sun and threw it across the driveway like a clean verdict. Karen's sunglasses slipped half an inch. "We are conducting authorized removal." By authorized? Mom said, opening the folder, "You mean Policy 14B, your unrecorded self-drafted addendum without a county instrument number adoption affidavit or notice to owners." Karen lifted her clipboard like a shield. The board approved it. Unanimous. Mom kept turning pages. "Where is the declaration amendment? Where is the clerk's stamp? Where is the mailed notice under Par 55.1? Tom murmured near my shoulder. "She's reading it into the record." The tow driver climbed down, squinting at the barrier and then at the crowd. "Which vehicle are we talking about?" Karen pointed at Mom's SUV. "The obstruction. It's in her own driveway," I said. Karen didn't look at me. "The safety zone extends 5 feet beyond community boundary," Mom finished tapping the page. "Which you invented. Show the recorded easement granting you entry onto this land." Karen's jaw set. "We don't litigate in the street." Mom closed the folder just enough. "We comply with law in the street." "Do you have any?" The tow driver glanced between us. "I need a signed order from the property owner or law enforcement." "That's standard." Karen's smile went brittle. "The board empowers me." He scratched his jaw. "The board doesn't sign my ticket book." A neighbor's phone picked up the HOA camera's faint beep click as it changed angle. The red light blinked twice, caught recorded, preserved. Karen tried again. "Officer, he's a driver," Mom said, gentle but surgical. "And he just told you his standard." "Ma'am," the driver said to Ellen. "You, the owner." Ellen nodded. "On the deed since 2010. No HOA encumbrance recorded after purchase." He rocked back on his heels. "Then I'm not touching that, ma'am." A ripple of relief moved through the crowd. Karen's clipboard dropped a fraction. She recovered instantly. "Fine. Then we'll escalate fines for non-compliance. 200 today, 250 tomorrow," Lovely Mom said. "Please include the statutory citation, the date of board adoption, the individual votes, and the clerk's instrument number." Karen's mouth tightened. "You don't intimidate me with jargon." "That isn't jargon," Mom answered. "That's the law." She opened the folder fully now. Inside, on top, a laminated credential and a letterhead with the state crest office of the Governor Legal Counsel. The seal wasn't decorative. It was procedural. The phones leaned forward as if gravity had changed. Karen laughed short and wrong. "So, you called someone in the governor's office?" Ellen didn't blink. "I work in the governor's office." The line cut the heat in half. The tow driver actually stepped back. Someone down the block whispered, Oh man, like a prayer with a grin on it. Karen bluffed hard. Conflict of interest. Mom shook her head. Jurisdiction. Not conflict. I'm not here in my capacity as counsel. I'm here as a homeowner. But I am trained to recognize fraud and unauthorized encumbrances. Karen tried to pivot. You can't threaten us with state action. Nobody has threatened you, Mom said. I'm telling you what the record will show. Fabricated titles, unrecorded policies, and an obstruction placed on private property. Karen turned to the tow driver, claws out but velveted. Sir, you are required to comply. He lifted his palms. I am required not to trespass. Put it in writing and bring me a lawful order. Until then, nope. Tom's voice stayed low. Watch the board, he whispered. Two of them just looked at the floor. I stepped forward so the HOA camera had me and Karen and the folder in the same frame. Ms. Holt, please read the vote into the record, names and dates. She didn't move. Ellen filled the quiet. And if you are going to claim emergency authority for this barrier, cite the statute. Then show the emergency. Karen tried one more card. Community harmony is the emergency. The crowd reacted like a body hearing bad news, a messy exhale. A few roughed-up laughs, phones angling for the face shot. The driver scribbled something on his clipboard and tucked the pen behind his ear. Mom slid a second page out of the folder, the gold seal in the corner glimmering like sunlight made of ink. Here is a draft of a letter on official letterhead addressed to your board. It lists the remedies we'll seek if the barrier isn't removed. It also notes our intent to refer misrepresentations of authority to the appropriate office. Karen blinked at the words, misrepresentations of authority. You're overplaying your hand. Mom nodded once. No, I'm finally using it. A hush landed, the kind that cracks something you can't see. I looked around at neighbors I'd only waved to before. Their faces were open in a way I hadn't seen since we moved in. Not cheering, not jeering, just recognizing. Tom put a hand against his thermos like it was a pulpit. Finally, someone near the mailbox said someone fought back. Karen heard it. She heard the street shifting under her shoes. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to provide the recorded instrument, or you're going to move that concrete. Today. Karen's sunglasses were back up now, armor in the glare. Or the state's going to help you understand boundaries, Mom said. The tow driver tipped his cap to her. Ma'am, he turned to me. Want me to write that I refused paper helps? Please, I said. Include time. He wrote 12:18 p.m. in neat block letters. The camera blinked like a witness. Karen tried to regather the moment. I'm postponing this action pending review. It sounded like a retreat with a drumbeat. We will revisit after counsel. Bring counsel, Mom said calmly. Bring filing numbers. Bring law. Karen took a step back. The barrier didn't move, but the space around it did. Power is strange that way. It looks heavy until it suddenly weighs nothing. I met the driver's eyes. Thanks for standing on the right side of the curb. Not my first HOA rodeo, he said. I faced Karen. So, the barrier. Her clipboard hovered at her side, uncertain for the first time. The neighborhood had raised its lenses, not its voice. She looked down at the concrete like it had betrayed her. Mom slid the draft letter back into the folder. The gold seal flashed once more across the driveway as clear as a sunrise. Then, unblock the driveway, she said each word slow and even before the state does. The mic light warmed from amber to red. Karen's fingers shook once on the switch. We'll keep this efficient, she said. Voice thinner than last time. The community hall smelled like floor polish and old coffee. The county inspector sat 3 chairs from center navy jacket notebook, already open, a small metal badge clipped to his pocket. Tom found the end of a row behind us, thermos-capped eyes steady. Mom rested the gold seal folder on the table and looked like a person who never raised her voice and never had to. Karen shuffled papers. First item, barrier. Safety protocol. Second, vehicle symmetry standards. Mom's tone could have sliced glass without sound. Before Agenda Chair Holt, I have exhibits. Karen blinked. Exhibits, Exhibit A, Mom said, sliding a photo sheet to the board and one to the inspector, the barrier on our driveway bolts visible time-stamped. Exhibit B, another sheet, the certified letter with the counterfeit HOA Enforcement Division logo, both accompanied by email headers and a CC list. Copies for the record. Phones angled. The court reporter for this circus was the street itself, every lens, every thumb. Karen tried a smile. We don't need theatrics. Mom didn't even look at her. We need facts. Please state for the record the clerk's instrument number for Addendum 14B. Karen looked to her left, then to her right. Internal policies are not required to— The inspector cleared his throat. I'll need a recording number as well. If the addendum attempts to modify property rights, it must be recorded with the county. The quiet was clean like air after a storm. Karen gathered her shoulders. The board has authority under the declaration to maintain community standards. Standards are not easements, the inspector said. Standards do not grant physical entry or the right to place objects on deeded land. Mom slid another page. Photograph of the barrier, install volunteers operating under the president's instruction. Time index corresponds to the HOA camera log, 3:17 a.m., notice followed by midday installation on a Saturday. Karen's laugh was too bright. Community vigilance. Overnight surveillance, I said. Read into record, please. The hall's fluorescent hum seemed more present whenever no one spoke, as if the lights were keeping time for us. A board member on Karen's right touched the corner of Exhibit B like it might burn. The inspector flipped through his notebook. Chair. Holt. Do you have the board? Vote and date? Karen found words that sounded like law, but weren't. The board supports community safety. Tom muttered just loud enough for the mic to nibble. That's not a vote. Mom kept the blade gentle. Please read names, yes or no. We'll wait. Karen stared at the red ring on the mic as if it might change color and absolve her. This is a homeowner meeting, not a deposition. It is a record, Mom said, even as she raised her phone and pressed record so deliberately the click might as well have been a gavel. Exhibit C audio of proceedings time-stamped. The inspector nodded. Proceed. Where Mom went on is the written authorization for towing from private driveways. Also recorded, also noticed. She rested her fingertips on the folder without opening it. Or does it live only in emails you wrote to yourself? A few chairs creaked. Someone coughed into a sleeve. Karen's jaw tightened. We have counsel. So do we, Mom said evenly. I am not acting in that capacity tonight. I am a homeowner asking for the law. The inspector looked at Exhibit B again. About this letter, HOA Enforcement Division, who created that mark, Karen didn't answer fast enough. It's clip art. A board member blurted, then stared at the table like he'd stepped on a rake. A murmured, "Oh," ran the back row. Karen snapped, "We're drifting." She pulled the mic closer. The barrier was necessary to restore order, and we will enforce tow authority if residents continue to interfere. The inspector shut his notebook. Not without recorded authority, you won't. Mini-cliff. The room held its breath. Somewhere a chair foot ticked against tile. Mom slid a final page across the table. The gold seal in the corner winked once. Draft letter from the governor's office to the board advising remedial steps and requesting confirmation that unrecorded policies will not be enforced. Karen lifted her chin. A threat. A courtesy, Mom said. The inspector turned toward the board, not Karen. Here are my findings. No recorded amendment for 14B. No evidence of easement expansion and a physical obstruction placed on deeded property without owner consent. The county instructs removal. Karen's knuckles whitened on the mic stem. We will seek review. You will comply, the inspector said. Then seek review. A camera somewhere beeped as it hit a file size and started a new clip. The sound pinged down the rows like truth made digital. Mom folded her hands. Chair, Holt. Please confirm for the record. Karen stared at the barrier photo, the counterfeit letterhead, the blinking red on the mic. The fight had been power against process. Process had shown up with a badge and a notebook. Her voice came from far away. "We'll remove the barrier within 48 hours. Phones went up again. Relief and disbelief crossed the room like front and weather. Tom exhaled a long, careful release like loosening a stubborn bolt. I found myself smiling without softness. Karen tried to add a coda, pending counsel. After removal, the inspector said. Mom nodded once the blade sheathed. She gathered the exhibits back into neat stacks, slid them into a large envelope, and wrote in clean block letters. Filed. Hearing 7:04 p.m. The pen click sounded exactly like an ending. I leaned into the mic a fraction. For clarity removal within 48 hours, fines paused, towing withdrawn, the inspector correct. Karen, silence. I tapped the mic base gently. The red ring didn't waver. On record. Saturday smelled like barbecue and freedom. Smoke drifted low across the cul-de-sac, catching in the sun that had finally decided to show up. Someone had rolled a portable grill to the center of the street. Someone else set up a speaker playing old country songs that everyone pretended not to know the words to. At the bulletin board near the mailboxes, usually layered with garage sale flyers and missing cat notes, there was a new sheet of paper, laminated gold seal, bright under the noon light. Office of the Governor Public Notice of Resolution. Tom leaned beside me, paper plate in one hand, tongs in the other. Never thought I'd see an HOA announcement with a state crest. Mom Ellen stood a few feet away, talking quietly with the inspector from last week's hearing. He handed her a duplicate copy, shook her hand, and left in a county sedan. The crowd around the board grew thicker. Someone read aloud, effective immediately, all fees collected under Unrecorded Addendum 14B are void. Residents will receive full refunds within 14 days. The obstruction installed on private property shall be removed within 48 hours. All HOA personnel are directed to attend training regarding legal boundaries of community authority. The red stamp at the bottom read, Completed, Filed, Certified. The paper fluttered as a breeze passed through, and for once nobody reached to steady it. They all just watched it move like proof could breathe. Sarah held her phone up to photograph the board. Looks better than the old bake sale poster, she said. Tom laughed under his breath. That's because this one actually helped people. The tow driver from last week pulled up in the same truck, now carrying nothing but a cooler. He stepped down, nodded at Mom, and raised a can of soda. Finally, someone fought back, he said. The phrase landed the way a verdict does. Solid, echoing final. People around him repeated it half to themselves, half to each other. Finally, someone fought back. Mom smiled but didn't step forward. She just looked at the letter, the gold seal catching the same light that had once bounced off her folder. The same sunlight but different meaning. I walked to her side. They're treating it like a holiday. It should be, she said. Not because we won, but because now they know they can say no. Tom set his plate down on the hood of a pickup. So, what happens to Karen Mom's voice stayed level. She remains president until the special election. The board will vote whether to retain her, but I suspect the community already has. Laughter from the grill drifted our way. Someone turned the music down just enough for conversation. Sarah looked over. Are we still under HOA rule? Mom glanced at the board. We're under law. That's better. The bulletin board now carried 2 photos stapled side by side. On the left, the driveway blocked by the concrete barrier bolts, bright as accusation. On the right, the same driveway clean and open, sunlight on asphalt. Someone had written in marker beneath them, before, after. No slogans, no hashtags, just quiet comparison. Kids chased each other around the circle plastic cups, clattering. The smell of charcoal mixed with cut grass and the faint sweetness of corn on the grill. Tom handed me a burger. You keeping the notice? I smiled. Mom's already archived everything. It'll end up in her folder with the others. She's got quite a collection, he said. She calls it evidence, I said. I call it insurance. The tow driver walked over with 2 plates balanced in one hand. So, When's the next HOA meeting? I might bring ribs." Mom laughed quietly. "You'll be welcome. It's open to the public now." He grinned. "Open? That's new?" "It's the law," she said simply. The crowd started clapping small at first, then rolling into a steady beat that didn't feel rehearsed. Ellen raised a hand once, acknowledging it without taking ownership. Then she stepped back, letting the sound belong to everyone else. I looked up at the HOA camera on the pole. The red LED was off for the first time in weeks. Tom caught me staring. "Guess it finally ran out of things to watch." "Or it finally saw enough," I said. He nodded. "Same thing." The inspector's car turned out of the cul-de-sac. Karen's house stayed dark. Someone said she'd turned in her resignation that morning. Nobody cheered for that part. Justice didn't need noise. It just needed daylight. Mom pinned the second copy of the letter to the bulletin board, aligning it carefully, smoothing the edges flat. "We'll leave it up for a while," she said. "People should see what right looks like." The BBQ sizzled louder. Kids laughed louder. The air felt lighter. Across the street, the barrier was gone. Only a pale outline remained on the asphalt where the bolts had been thin, harmless like an old scar that stopped hurting once you understood why it was there. Sarah called out, "Next week's potluck." "Same spot?" "Same spot," Tom answered. "No barriers allowed." That got an easy laugh. I looked at Mom. She had her hand on the bulletin board, fingers resting under the seal. Her eyes were calm, not triumphant, just done. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," she said. "It's quiet again. That's enough." The tow driver raised his can toward the crowd. "To quiet," they echoed him. "To quiet." The music picked up again, Johnny Cash rolling through cheap speakers, twangy and steady. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of hickory and sauce across the open driveways. Mom turned to go inside, folder under her arm. The sun caught the seal once more before she stepped through the door. The crowd behind us laughed, clapped, and started talking over one another again. And, above it all, the sound of a camera shutter clicked once, capturing the moment, the end of it, and the proof that it happened. The morning came soft and square like a clean sheet pulled over the street. Dew traced the edges of every mailbox. The world smelled like new asphalt and coffee. For the first time in months, the HOA camera above the gate blinked green instead of red standby. Watching nothing. Recording nothing. Just ready. Mom was already outside watering the small row of azaleas that had somehow survived the chaos. The concrete barrier was gone. Even the bolt scars had been patched smooth, darker gray against the old surface. I leaned on the SUV's hood, the metal still cool, the reflection of sunlight cutting a line across the windshield, the same place where the yellow notice of violation had once been taped. Now it was just glass clean and ordinary. A moving truck idled 3 houses down. Karen stood beside it in a pale cardigan, clipboard nowhere in sight. No entourage, no board members. Just her watching her own driveway disappear behind a stack of boxes. Tom crossed from his porch, raising a hand halfway, the kind of gesture that meant it's over. Karen didn't wave back, but she nodded once. Then she climbed into the cab and shut the door. The truck eased down the street, tires whispering against pavement until the sound was swallowed by distance. Mom turned off the hose. "She's gone," she said simply. I nodded. "Feels smaller without her." "Smaller," Mom said, "and right-sized." The mailbox clanked open. Inside, a single envelope, Community Affairs Office. She slid it with her thumb, scanned the letter, and smiled. Refund confirmed. Full amount credited back to every homeowner. "That fast justice moves slowly," she said, folding it until it doesn't. Tom joined us, coffee steaming in one hand. "They posted it online," he said. "The board's new bylaw draft is 2 paragraphs long." Mom smiled. "Short laws are the honest ones." He handed me his phone. On the HOA site was a simple banner, "Policy Update Driveway, Access Restored." "Apology issued. We acknowledge our mistake. Thank you for reminding us who owns what." No signature. Just a digital seal that somehow looked humbler than all the others. The cul-de-sac had its sounds-back sprinklers, clicking, someone hammering a fence post, a dog barking twice, then giving up. Normal. That was the miracle. Mom went inside to make tea. I stayed where I was, phone in hand, scrolling through the photo gallery from the last few weeks. The yellow notice on the windshield. The barrier mid-construction. Ellen's folder catching sunlight. The letter on the bulletin board. And now the clean driveway unmarked and open. I selected the last photo, titled it Before, After, Final, and pinned it to the neighborhood group thread. The caption was just 4 words. Finally, someone fought back. Replies started coming in thumbs. Hearts, short messages from neighbors I barely knew. Thanks for standing up. About time. Drinks next weekend. The HOA camera above the gate clicked once mechanical and faint. Its lens rotated toward the sky, catching only clouds. Tom followed my gaze. Think they'll ever turn that thing back on? Probably, I said. But maybe now it's for safety, not control. He chuckled. Optimist. Realist, I said. Same thing on a good day. He nodded toward the SUV. You gonna take that last photo, yeah? I stepped back until the driveway filled the frame sunlight shadow and a clean line of asphalt leading out to the street. I raised the phone. The shutter clicked. Mom opened the screen door. Breakfast before you start working on that carburetor. In a minute. She smiled, the kind that didn't need victory to feel complete. Don't forget to send that picture to the archive. I will. She went back inside. The curtain lifted once behind her, then settled. I looked up at the camera. Its green light blinked once more, ready. For the record, I said softly, just loud enough for the microphone that might still be there. Finally, someone fought back. The camera's red LED flickered once, a polite acknowledgement, then went dark again. A breeze moved through, carrying the smell of cut grass and faint barbecue from somewhere down the block. The sound of a door chime rang from across the street, someone coming home. The world for once was ordinary, and that felt extraordinary enough. The driveway shines clean under the noon sun, and the state seal still glints on the posted order by the bulletin board. The letter's edges curl a little now, but every neighbor who passes slows down to read it again. We didn't tear anything down, we simply made it right. Justice didn't arrive in noise. It arrived in daylight through a signature and a seal that stayed where everyone could see it. Some victories don't echo, they settle. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.